So good afternoon, everybody in Europe, in Israel, in Jerusalem, Berlin, wherever you are. We are in another meeting of Ma'avarim. Ma'avarim is a project to enhance social professionalization of students. We do it voluntarily, and we do it because sometimes the universities are not doing it. My name is David Levy-Four. I spot myself to everyone. And today we have the privilege to host Kirsten Leufgen from SCIPROM. Kirsten is the co-founder of SCIPROM, which is a project management science-driven organization. They help with grant writing and career advice. And I think she will present it herself, both her background and what she does in SCIPROM, and then she will move on to kind of give the talk on career paths outside academia. I think it's an important topic, and I think academia and the PhD shouldn't only focus on preparing people for academic career. Because the PhD is very good outside academia, in the industry, in government, in the civil society. We need more PhD, and indeed we are going in this direction. But academia is very slow to adapt, so this is what we do in Ma'avarim, and we have the privilege to host Kirsten. So Kirsten, you will start with your talk, and then we will have a Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. So I will share my screen. Let's see.
Yeah, but don't forget to tell us about yourself as well as.
Sure. So before we start, maybe just why do I dare to explain things like that? So just to give a bit about my background, I'm a chemist by training. I have done a PhD in biophysical chemistry. And afterwards, of course, I did the postdoc, and I stayed for quite a while at the Ecole Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne. But then after some 8-9 years, I had to make a decision what to do, try to stay in academia or go elsewhere. And at the time, I had worked in research, but also pretty much in terms of research funding, accompanying grants which were funded in our group and things like that. I was more and more going into research management and funding. And based on that, we decided to create a company, which in principle accompanies projects from the idea of a researcher to its end. We are accompanying the proposal writing, but also once the project is funded, we accompany the project in terms of management and administration, but also in terms of dissemination and communication. We create websites and accompany the whole communication strategy of the project. So that's a bit my background. So I also had to decide at some point what to do with my PhD outside academia. And for us, it was the creation of a company, which came quite well at the time because I'm based in Switzerland. And when we created the company, Switzerland was for the first time allowed to fully participate in European projects. And these collaborative projects, of course, are quite demanding. And as Switzerland was new to that, we came in the right moment. We were from the beginning, quite well occupied with that. So I think it's also always a bit about coming in the right moment with the right idea. So with that background, let's maybe have a look at the presentation. So I think before we have a look at what are the different possibilities for somebody with a PhD outside academia is maybe, who am I and what am I really looking for? What's important for me? So we will have a look at that and then have a look at the different opportunities, really from research management via communication to consulting and freelance. We will have a look at platforms which exist where you can find others who are looking for similar opportunities, or you can find information. And we will have in the end a question and answers section where we can discuss how best to go forward and what are the different possibilities. But do not hesitate to interrupt me anytime anyways. Yeah. So who am I? Yeah. So I have my PhD. I have probably or possibly also a few years of postdoc afterwards. And then I'm asking myself, yeah, what do I want? What are my ambitions? Do I want to stay in academia? Do I want to go for a professorship? Am I rather aiming for something more in industry? Is it something in a NGO I would like to do? I would really, yeah, you need to think about what, yeah, where you see yourself also in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Huh? So is it still research I would like to work on, or would I like to apply what I've learned in research? How is it about my work-life balance? Am I somebody who doesn't care to work around the clock? Or is it more that I try to find a combination between my family life, my other hobbies, and my work? Is it, no, I can't see that anymore. How dependent am I from my family point of view, or from other things which I would like to do as well? How flexible am I with my work? I'm really getting in trouble with this box. I have to find somehow a way. Oops.
No worries.
It's I'm not sure how to get rid of that. So financial security, how important is that to me? Am I quite flexible? Is there enough money anyways in the family, or do I need to bring as much as possible? How about my personal strengths and weaknesses? And directly related to that, what is my preferred role and tasks? What is driving me? Do I want to have a job which is calm and I start at 9 and I finish at 5 every day? Or is it rather that I want to solve a societal problem and I'm really driven and would really like to achieve something? In that sense, am I somebody who likes to be on stage and very visible? Or is it more that I would like to work a bit backstage and quiet and do my thing? Very different arguments how to find your next opportunity. So based on that background and these reflections, there are a number of different opportunities outside academia. So you can still work in higher education and research, but more from an administrational point of view. So for example, like we do accompanying projects and more doing project management and communication, you can have a look at, from the other viewpoint if you want, from the viewpoint of funding agencies, where you would develop calls for topics or calls for projects, and where you would accompany the projects from a funding agency point of view, a control point of view as well. You could work in communications, publishing. You could do consulting, and this is a very wide field. You could also work in financial services, very often based on statistical skills you may have or something like that. There are also, of course, a lot of non-profit organizations for which you can work. There are think tanks, research centers. You can also make up your own company, be it a bigger one or a smaller one, be it in biotech, or be it a consulting company, or be it a service company. And you can also work on a freelance base, on a totally independent consulting base. Are there any questions or proposals so far? If that's not the case, I would go ahead one after one and have a look at them. So research and educational administration. So this is something where you can work to support, for example, students and help them in the academic affairs. So you can give academic advice, maybe also from your experience, what was maybe during your studies not always so easy. What would be something where you think that's useful to offer to the next generations? You can also give, like we do now, career services, help students to find their way. You can also support activities more at the university level in terms of diversity and inclusion, exchanges for students, also on the alumni level, once students left, what can you offer to them after their studies? So that would be one point. You could work on everything around research funding, from proposal writing to grant management and controlling. And there are always, of course, the two sides, as we said before, the applicant side, and you can, as we do, help the applicants to polish the proposal and have the grant financed. Or from the other side, you could think about what project could we call for and which of the projects would we like to select for funding, and accompany then the project and control their finances and see what they deliver against their costs. So these are more research funding points. Then there is the possibility to write, teach, or learn and accompany undergraduates in that sense. So give additional soft skill training if you want to students, or if you would like to work on a more organizational level, you can also be involved in questions of research policies. That would then be on the level of university directions or between universities, for example, also to develop programs or further develop programs like Erasmus and things like that. And what are your strategies at an organizational level? Are there questions or remarks regarding this first opportunity group? That's not the case. We would go ahead. So in terms of research funding, there are different levels. There are, of course, national agencies in all countries. There are also international agencies like the European Commission's programs. You can be there involved in the development of programs, more on a strategic or societal, from a societal viewpoint. So what are the issues I would like to address? What are the projects we need to fund? You can, in that sense, develop calls for proposals. You will be involved in evaluations, typically together with expert reviewers, and you would follow up the projects once they are funded. Apart from that, you can also work more from a communications point of view, and there are, again, a number of levels. You can think about academic publishing, so you could imagine to work for scientific journals, book series, you could accompany thesis, but you can also imagine to work more non-academic, in more non-academic publishing, like for newspapers, magazines, more popular scientific magazines or online publications, media outlets. And that also leads, of course, to all the communications to be done in industry, in university, in all kinds of public offices where you need to communicate to the public at large or to certain stakeholder groups, and you need to prepare and analyze data and somehow present the achievements of your organization to the outer world, to targeted stakeholders or to the public at large. And that can, of course, also be then in the context of international and external platforms. There is then also the possibility of, and I need to see what's behind here, financial services. So that is more something where you maybe come from programming skills, statistical knowledge. You have maybe experience working with large data sets. And then you can also be very interesting candidate for banks or for other financial services, also trading companies, hedge funds, and so on. So that's a bit different field, which could be interesting then. Oops. Voilà. Another possibility is to work for non-profit organizations. They are very often dedicated to certain topics, can be health, can be environment, can be ethnicities, education, religion, arts, marginalized groups of all kinds. Whatever topic is important to you as well. And there we are back to this question, how is my ambition? Do I want to solve a societal problem? Do I have something really which is important to me and which I would like to work on? These are often charitable organizations or advocacy groups, professional societies working in a certain professional field. Can also be research institutes again, aiming, for example, at peace research or something like that, for example. Here again, in this context, you can do either research yourself in these organizations, but you can also work in terms of fundraising for these organizations and manage their grants, the projects they manage to achieve. You can also have a look more from a higher level on evaluating the work which has been done by this organization so far. So how have the programs we put in place before worked? So was that what we wanted? Do we need to change something? Do we need to create new programs, new activities? And in that sense, you can give, of course, also advice. And it's also a sort of activism. So you are a bit away from the mere research, neutral research, independent research. You work with a certain aim, with a certain strategy. A bit in the same sense would also be think tanks and research centers, where you would again evaluate the programs which are there. You would see what is the public opinion in a certain field and how to interact with a larger public if you are interested in a certain topic. This is often linked to matters of government policy, so foreign policy, security, economy, social policies, and things like that. So you will also be involved in analysis, for example, of the current situation and analyzing the current situation and develop a strategy based on that. There is a huge number of think tanks, and I just put a link where you can find whatever think tank you can think about exists. There is then also, apart from these activities, the possibility to create your own company, which has the advantage that you can turn your idea into your business. You would try probably to address a social need, and you would need to find a niche market or a market where there is still possibility to develop something for yourself. So that is something which, as I said in the beginning when we talked about my career, this is something where you need to see what's possible at the moment, and you need to have a feeling for what could be interesting for others and what could be lucrative enough for you to live on that. The last possibility is freelance and independent consulting. So you can do anything of the opportunities we discussed before on a freelance basis, so not being employed by an organization. And you can do that totally independently on a project basis. And of course, you are then totally open to work for different employers. You can change what you're doing on a very frequent way. This is, of course, highly flexible, and you can adapt to what you would like to do, to your availabilities as well. You can 1 month work 10% and another one 120 if need be. It's very flexible, but of course, it's at your own risk. And you might not always find something for the next month, or you will be on a constant risk not to find something, or it will be maybe stressing for you to find something. So there are advantages and disadvantages of that. It's often also a phase where you are looking for something, and while you're waiting to find maybe the good opportunity to create your own enterprise, this is also a possibility to fill the gap, let's say. So with that, we would come to the exchange platforms. We are in the end of the different opportunities I wanted to present. And I just wanted to make you aware of 4 different platforms where you can find others, maybe in the same situation, and where you can find information in this context. So if we go through them, the first would be the European University Foundation. This is a network of universities. So this site looks from the viewpoint of universities, from the organizational point of view. They would like to promote student mobility. They are also always interested in the best possible programs to make available for students and the best possible policies available. So that is something they also offer everybody to get involved in that and help them develop their programs. And it's also a knowledge exchange platform. And in particular for project manager and advisors, there is material available and there are communities which are built. So networking activities are very interesting on this platform. There is then also Eurodoc, and you might have heard about that. That is a platform from and for doctoral candidates and young researchers. So that is really on the level of young researchers and not from an organizational point of view. And this is a grouping to foster education, research, and professional development by young researchers for young researchers, with the idea to advance the quality of doctoral programs and also to advance the standards of research activities in general in Europe. Here again, you can exchange information. There are a number of events offered. There is also the possibility to debate on higher education and research policies on this platform. And overall, the idea is also to cooperate between national associations and to make use of a European level of interactions. There is also PhD Hub. This is again from young researchers for young researchers, but more from an interaction between public and private sectors, pretty much also industry driven, this platform. There you also have a lot of opportunities, job markets, cooperation calls, also again networking. And they have a lot of free resources, courses, which you can participate in, webinars they offer mostly for free. So that is also a good basis for information. And with that, we are coming to the end of my presentation, and you have the possibility to ask your questions now and start to discuss with all the different possibilities.
Thank you very much, Christine. And I invite questions and also comments from one experience. Maybe take a few questions first and then draw on the experience of the participants. So who wants to go? I don't see ends, so maybe just enter the discussion.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for all this important knowledge, which is not easy to find alone. I wanted to ask you how, in your opinion, how different it is for students who are coming from the social sciences and in compared to students, PhD students that are related to more quantitative or, you know, different fields, how it's changed?
I think it's maybe in some points easier for PhDs from the natural sciences to work in industry directly, for example. But I think for most of the opportunities I showed, there is little or no difference between these fields. It's really more a question of where would you then like to work, what kind of knowledge would you like to use. Of course, if you would like to work for a health organization or something like that, they would probably rather look for a biological or medical background. But in many fields, a social science background will be fine, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Eva, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentation and also for organizing this, because this is sort of exactly what I've been looking for. I had two questions, one for Kirsten and one for David. The one for Kirsten, I guess, is since you started your own company to help researchers kind of being able to apply for grants for European projects and taking them through the whole system, is what I understand. Mm-hmm. Since you mentioned freelancers as an option, in your experience as a business owner, how often do you rely on freelancers to collaborate with you for that kind of work? Or because I'm interested in doing something very similar, but I'm wondering whether it would make more sense to either start a company or get hired by a company that already does these things, or to start out as a freelancer myself and offer my services.
So we are very regularly looking for new personnel, and we very regular also receive applications. So yes, there would be the need for new persons to be involved, for sure. I think it's, at least in that field, in a very grand preparation and accompanying projects, it would be difficult for a freelancer, as at least I have seen that before, because at least for the phase where you accompany a project, we act as a partner of the consortium of the project. Okay. And to be accepted by the European Commission as a company receiving their funding as one of the partners, you need to have a certain size and stability. And they would not easily involve you as an independent. So it would need to be at least somehow a company which is well established somewhere and which can provide some accounting information. So in that sense, I think working for a company is probably, or creating your own company is probably more advantageous.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, which was for David, I'm not familiar with the Mahaparim program. This is my first. I happened upon the link, I think, through my university, but it sounds interesting, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about it, about what kind of how can one participate in the program, or what kind of things does it do? You mentioned you're a volunteer, so I wanted to learn a little bit more about the program. I don't know if this is the place for it. If everybody else knows, maybe you could just send some information. but I would appreciate that.
I'd be very happy to tell in few sentences what Maverim is, just not to take too long. Maverim is a voluntary kind of project to help young researchers in their career development outside within academia and also outside academia. So we do all kinds of events, usually via Zoom, to support professional development, from dealing with issues of grant application, career development, how to work better with your supervisor, how to manage your supervisor. We also do a kind of a general citizenship issue, the history and governance of academia, so people know more about academia. And we did it in Israel mostly, but also increasingly are going to make it also a program or a project that orient towards the general community outside Israel, meaning in English, more English content. That's how we are. We have a website and also YouTube channel and the listserv, and you are most welcome to join. I warn you, it's intensive. A lot of emails are going on the network, so you need to have kind of ability to deal with email, a flood of email. Thank you, Eva, and others.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Others wants to enter the discussion to tell us about their experience, their dilemmas, their situation.
You can, of course, anytime afterwards also get back to me, huh? And I can maybe quickly, so it's also on the webinar, show my screen once more for the last slide I have, which is just my address and my website.
Yeah. Maybe I can ask questions.
Anytime contact us. Yes, of course.
Sure.
It's a more general question. At what point you think it's a right time to have this decision?
That's an excellent question. So wait, I'm not sharing anymore. Yeah, it depends a little bit. Sometimes you're also forced, huh? Depends once you're arriving at the end of your funding, for example, in university, or also if you feel like I would like to find something else, I would like to change. I had the impression it was for me quite easy after my PhD to start a postdoc. And then it's also quite handy to stay as a postdoc and to stay as a researcher. And I think for me, it was at least somehow also I was forced to find something else, either really in an academic career, but I could not easily stay in the same university. So I had to make up my mind. And I think it's somehow, it's ideal, of course, if you can take the time and think about what you would really like to do when you're not somehow forced by the conditions around you. But it's nevertheless often the case, because it's also a question of times and efforts you have. Huh? But I think it's still useful for most of the opportunities I have shown to complete the PhD and maybe have at least a few years of experience in research before heading for the different possibilities I have shown. Depends. For example, publishing, all the questions around communication, you probably need a little less research activities before you go there. But if you will, for example, think of think tanks or NGOs, they would probably like to have a bit more of a research background.
Yeah, I would say that sometimes, depending on your economic situation, do you get a fellowship and not, or the disciplines that you are, if you are humanities, is different than natural sciences. not to wait until you don't have the option. Look for options and make the cost-benefit analysis even during your PhD or MA studies. So be attentive, think about what you are doing and why, and don't wait until the end, say the end of the PhD is the end of the postdoc. Always try to be part of a network and learn from others on their career phase, and then to some extent extend your capacities, abilities, etc., to make more options for yourself in any stage of your graduate studies.
Thank you, but may I ask a little addition to this question? The question regarding the postdoc, like if I don't have any intentions to have academic career, if it's good idea to invest my time in postdoc or like directly to go and search for another opportunities?
I think it depends. There were more research-based activities are looked for, like if you would like to do a grants office or research funding agencies, but also, as I said before, NGOs and think tanks and so on. I think there a postdoc is probably very useful. There are other activities like working at the university level, more in the sense of accompanying studentship, or also everything in publication and publishing and communication. There probably you would not need a postdoc. So it depends. I don't know, David, how would you see that?
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends where you're coming from, where you're going to, what is the cost and benefits from a postdoc. For me, the postdoc was kind of the cream of all the research process. I could move from my own country to another country, despite the fact that I didn't have fellowship. I had to survive somehow. Things are better now. So it depends. If you go to postdoc and you have funding. Sometimes postdoc is also good for family reasons, having kids, etc. It depends on postdocs of 1 year or 3 years. So it depends. It depends also on you. What do you want to learn?
I think you're right, David, in the sense of if you think the postdoc is a burden or something which you feel is useful and you feel you do it because it's useful, then it's probably a pity, because the postdoc David is true, is right. It's something, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to do the research, but it's also a pleasure to change places, to get it installed somewhere else, to be part of a research community and things like that. So if that's somehow interesting to you and you would like to do that, then do it. If it's more like a must and you feel like you should do that to be successful afterwards, then I would probably not do it.
Thank you a lot.
More questions, experiences? Yeah, I see one end is up. So please, Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. That was most interesting. I'm really not asking for myself. I'm asking for my daughter, who completed her PhD and postdoc, and then fortunately gave birth to one of my grandchildren and had stopped. She was working for a chemical research company. She also did her studies in chemistry, and she's now in the situation where her child is old enough and she would like to go back to work. The reason I'm asking you is really more, I think a lot of the things you were talking about on the networks you were talking about were Eurocentric. And my daughter is now living in Scotland. And I wondered, because you
in
have
Europe.
Yeah, well, not in the EU part of Europe, but also Switzerland is a little bit different. I wondered if there's any kind of limitation to people who are living outside of the main European country bloc in joining things you were mentioning.
No, I don't think so. So in any case, I think also in Scotland and the UK in general, many of the opportunities in universities and funding agencies and so on, they do exist, same as elsewhere. It's also many of these jobs can be done online in a home office, so doesn't matter where you are. And I think many of the things you can very well do in Scotland. And it's part of Europe, huh? More or less politically, but that's another question. Huh? But no, I think it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
And I think it's even for many of the activities, as you can do many things in home office, it doesn't really matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Maybe you can also tell about yourself. You came out and inside academia. Maybe what was your experience?
No, actually, you're wrong. I never came from academia. I was a frustrated academic. I was involved in IT. I have been living in Israel for the last 40 years, but I was actually born in Scotland, and I'm now living in Oxford temporarily. Basically, I always was interested in academia, but I never had the opportunity because I basically didn't really do very much other than the first degree, 65 years ago in the UK. But my interest at the moment is in something called structured democratic dialogue, which does have a basis on an academic basis, basically attempting to apply structure and rules to dialogue between individuals with conflicting views to enable consensus to be reached.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it actually does work, believe it or not. Not in the places where I've tried, like in Palestine and Israel, but in a lot of other areas, it is a way of people who have coming from differing viewpoints and backgrounds, entering into a dialogue where they don't argue with each other. They don't say their idea is better than somebody else's idea, but they begin to understand the background and the root causes of disagreements between people, and on the basis of that, they can move forward on an agreed future plan.
Thank you very much, Marcus, on that. Good to get to know you better.
No problem.
More questions? I say one question is in the chat by Ayala. She wants to know if we can get the slides afterwards, and this is up to Christine to answer.
Yes, I think so. In any case, I think you will make available the webinar, right?
Yeah.
So they are in, but I can also make them available as a PDF and send them then to David, and then you can maybe distribute them.
Yeah, I'll put them online afterwards. Thank you very much, Christine. One more question, and before we finish, or no? If not, we will finish here with a lot of thanks to Christine. A lot of
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Christine. It's also only voluntary, and we appreciate it very much. I would say that I met Christine via a project of the H2020 or HorizonEurope, or both. I don't remember anymore.
It's funded under Horizon 2020.
Horizon 2020. Yeah. And it was a pleasure to meet with her, to work with her and the team in SCIPROM.
Yeah, we say SCIPROM, but anyways.
Yeah. So thank you very much, all, and we see you in the future in more activities of Maverin. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the invitation.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Have a good afternoon. Bye bye.
Good afternoon. Bye.